They arrived like most passengers do, smiling at the gangway, pulling soft-wheeled suitcases, a small map of the ship folded in a pocket. Retirement had given them something rarer than money or time: perspective. For years, they'd answered to alarms, bills, and routines. For two people who had spent a lifetime planning, the sea offered a different kind of schedule: tide, light, and the slow turning of days. At first, it was just a holiday: 2 weeks of ports, early breakfasts, and late dinners. The ship's hum felt like a companion: engines, distant chatter, the clinking of dishes below. They found a corner in the library where the light hit the spines just right, a cafe with a view of the railing, and a bench on Deck 7 that watched sunsets as if they were private. 2 weeks turned into 3 extra days. Then another cruise was an easy decision. The crew barely noticed. The ship was endless with faces that came and went. What Ed and Mabel discovered wasn't a loophole. It was a feeling. The sea simplified everything. There were no unpaid bills on the kitchen table, no neighbor needing favors, no small emergency to put out. Mornings were measured in coffee and sunlight, not to-do lists. They weren't trying to escape life exactly. They were choosing a life that fit them better. They didn't sneak in crates or sleep in unused storerooms. Their method was softer: blending. When a cruise ended and the bulk of passengers disembarked, they'd linger in the buffet for an extra cup of tea. They'd change cabins quietly during a port stop and reappear with a new key card like any other passenger. Sometimes they asked for upgrades, sometimes they purposely took cheaper rooms. Variety kept them unpredictable. Mabel learned the art of casual conversation. When another passenger mentioned the next port, she'd respond with a laugh and a vague plan, nothing that invited deeper questions. Ed practiced curiosity. "Have you been here before? Which shore do you like best?" They smiled a lot, listened more, and revealed very little. They built routines that mirrored the rhythms of ordinary guests: breakfast at odd times, a show now and then, long afternoons with a book on the same bench. To the crew and fellow travelers, they were simply two friendly retirees. Stretch a habit long enough and patterns show. It began with small observations: the same faces at the buffet, the same reading light left on in a cabin at odd hours. One afternoon, a young cleaner pushing a laundry cart found a familiar pile of shirts and noted the cabin number. It wasn't dramatic, just curiosity. The cleaner mentioned it during a break. Another crew member remembered seeing the couple at a different show. A waiter realized he'd served them for weeks. The threads accumulated. Human systems leave traces. The entertainment staff kept lists of performers and audiences. The dining team remembered regular tables. Someone in the office flipped through the passenger manifests and noticed an inconsistency. Ed and Mabel's names weren't on recent booking lists the way regular guests were. Maybe they'd been missed because the crew rotated through so many faces. Or maybe kindness had tangled with process. Either way, the pattern rose like a tide. The captain could have called port authorities, made a scene. Instead, he chose quiet. He invited them to the office one evening. There was no shouting, no handcuffs, only a respectful, awkward kind of curiosity. For a moment, you could see the years of sea in the captain's face. He'd spent much of his life balancing rules and people. Ed and Mabel didn't pretend. They told the truth. The exact kind of truth that's both small and enormous. A 2-week holiday that, piece by piece, became a decade. 10 years of sunsets, library corners, quiet dinners, and the rhythm of the ship replacing the rhythm of home. The captain listened, surprised and bemused. There was no malicious intent, only a long habit turned into a way of life. He had a choice to make. There were operational reasons why passengers need records: safety, immigration, logistical planning. But there was also a human side. After a night of consideration, he offered them a solution designed to avoid spectacle, stay until the voyage ended, and then step ashore quietly. No headlines, no arrests. A soft ending to an unusual chapter. Those final weeks were a slow compression of everything they'd been living. Mabel visited the library nook with a tenderness she'd never let herself show in public. Ed sat on the bench and watched the waves as if memorizing their curve. Each conversation with crew members had a different weight. Small apologies, laughs about narrow escapes, a few wistful goodbyes. On the last night, they watched the moon ship glint across the water without saying much. In the morning, they took the gangway like any passengers, hands shaking, not from the climb, but from the strange sense of being tourists in their own lives. Land was loud. Pavement startled them with speed. Technology and time had moved on. Apps, screens, new rules they'd missed. Friends had moved away. Houses had been sold or rented. They took classes, learning phones and apps, and relearned the art of holding a conversation that moved faster than the rhythm of a ship. It was awkward and sometimes painful, but they were resilient. A year later, they booked a short cruise. This time, there was no secrecy. Stepping back aboard felt like returning to a named harbor with the lights on, familiar and safe. People recognized them from their story. A crew member, who'd once pushed a laundry cart, stopped to say hello. Over time, Ed and Mabel transformed from shadowed figures into beloved regulars. The couple who'd once lived at sea now lived at sea by choice and with the blessing of friends they'd made. They cruised differently after that. Shorter trips, slower legs, more time spent in ports they loved. Years later, they decided on a final grand voyage. A world cruise touching remote ports, cities they'd learned about in books, and islands that seemed designed to be small and private. The trip became a celebration, not of escape, but of a life lived fully. When they finally chose to put down roots, they found a cottage by the shore. It was small, with a kitchen that smelled of herbs and a window that watched the harbor like a friend. Sometimes old crew members would visit. The captain came by some winters, and they'd sit over tea and laugh about the little things: a missing suitcase, a near upgrade, a gentle nod that had kept them safe. There's something honest and uncomfortable in their story. It raises questions about systems and empathy. The ship's rules exist for good reasons: safety, identity, order. But the sea also showed them a truth about life. Sometimes what people need is not punishment, but a chance to be human again. Ed and Mabel didn't steal a life. They found one and learned how to keep it quietly. In the end, they paid the cost of reintegration by facing the world again. They paid nothing to the law and everything to learning how to live among other people once more. If this story touched you, leave a like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Share it with someone who loves odd, gentle adventures. And if you're ever on a ship at dusk, look for the quiet benches, the books open to dog-eared pages, and know that someone, somewhere, is living a story that only they can tell. Thank you for treading this trail of tales till we travel together again on another adventure.